in a small town in rural United States called Willow Creek. The town is surrounded by dense forests and mountains, where the fog is constant and the days are short and gloomy, even during the summer. The protagonist, Emily Thompson, is a young mother of two small children, Jason, 7 years old, and Lily, 5 years old. Emily is married to David Thompson, an engineer who recently accepted a new job, which forced the family to move to an old and isolated house on the outskirts of Willow Creek. The house they moved into has a long history. Built in the early 20th century, it belonged to a wealthy family, but was abandoned for many years after a series of inexplicable tragedies occurred there. The residence is an imposing Victorian structure, with tall windows and thick walls, surrounded by ancient trees and dense vegetation that almost hides it from the view of the curious. When the family arrived, they noticed that the house was in good condition, but it had a heavy atmosphere, as if the walls were holding dark secrets. From the beginning, the atmosphere of the story is filled with tension and mystery. The town, although picturesque, has an air of distrust and silence, as if its inhabitants know more than they let on. Emily, who has always been a skeptical person, begins to feel a growing unease as she explores the house. The presence of shadows at the corner of her eyes, whispers during the night, and the feeling of being watched start to disturb her deeply. A few days after settling in, strange things begin to happen. Objects move around, lights flicker, and blackouts are frequent. Jason and Lily complain of constant nightmares and seeing a shadowy figure watching them while they sleep. The children's behavior begins to change. They become increasingly withdrawn and frightened. Emily tries to rationalize the events, but everything changes when she finds small, dark handprints on the walls of the children's room, as if they were pressed from the inside out. The family discovers that the house has a tragic history. A young woman named Sarah, who lived there about 50 years ago, was brutally murdered by her own husband, who then took his own life. Sarah, however, never found peace. Her vengeful spirit remained trapped in the house, haunting all who dared cross her path. As the days go by, the strange occurrences in the house intensify. Emily begins to feel that something is seriously wrong, but her husband, David, remains skeptical, attributing the phenomena to electrical faults and the children's imaginations. However, Emily realizes that she can no longer ignore the increasingly disturbing behavior of Jason and Lily. They are becoming more apathetic, as if something is draining their life energy. Lily, in particular, starts talking about a friend who visits her at night, describing her as a sad woman in old-fashioned clothes with a vacant stare. Emily decides to investigate the house's history and uncovers more details about Sarah and the tragedy that occurred there. With the help of an elderly neighbor, Mrs. Collins, who has lived in the town since she was young, Emily learns that Sarah was a sweet and kind woman but suffered abuse at the hands of her husband, a violent and possessive man. After being murdered, Sarah swore vengeance against anyone who tried to live in the house, especially families, to make them feel the pain she felt. Determined to protect her family, Emily tries to convince David to leave the house, but he resists, arguing that there's nowhere else to go and that he can't abandon his new job. Desperate, Emily begins to seek help outside the town. She finds a local medium, a man named Samuel, who is known for helping with spiritual problems. Samuel visits the house and immediately senses Sarah's presence. He reveals that Sarah's spirit is trapped between two worlds, consumed by hate and sorrow, and that she needs to be released for peace to return to the house. However, this won't be easy, as Sarah feeds off the family's fear and suffering, and she won't give up without a fight. As Emily and Samuel attempt to perform a ritual to calm the spirit, things take an unexpected turn. Sarah manifests physically, attacking Emily and Samuel. During the confrontation, Samuel is severely injured, and Sarah's presence in the house grows even stronger. The lights flicker violently, doors slam with force, and the walls seem to throb with a malevolent energy. David, who had been refusing to believe, finally witnesses one of Sarah's attacks and begins to understand the gravity of the situation. His skepticism turns into deep fear, but he knows he must be strong to protect his family. He joins Emily and Samuel albeit reluctantly, to try to find a solution. The children, Jason and Lily, begin to play a crucial role in the story. Jason, though haunted, tries to protect his younger sister, feeling responsible for her. He starts drawing strange and dark figures, as if trying to communicate something he can't put into words. One of these drawings shows Sarah holding an old key, which leads Emily to believe that the key might be the solution to freeing the spirit. The tension in the house reaches its peak when Jason mysteriously disappears on a stormy, rainy night. Emily and David panic, tearing through the house in search of their son, but he seems to have been swallowed by the darkness. Jason's disappearance is the catalyst for a series of sinister events that reveal the true power of Sarah. Emily finds more drawings made by Jason before his disappearance. Among them is a frighteningly detailed image of a basement they hadn't noticed before in the house. Upon investigating, Emily and David discover a hidden door behind a false wall in the basement. When they open the door, they are confronted by a dark, cold room where they find Jason, catatonic, sitting in a corner holding the old key he had drawn. In the center of the room is an old locked chest. Seeing their son in this state awakens a deep desperation in Emily. She feels overwhelming guilt for not protecting her children from the vengeful spirit. David, on the other hand, is paralyzed between fear and anger, feeling powerless in the face of what's happening. The tension between the couple reaches a critical point, with David blaming Emily for insisting on seeking answers, while Emily blames David for not believing her from the start. Despite the tension, their love for their children unites them in their determination to end this curse once and for all. Emily, believing that the key is the only way to free Sarah, convinces David to open the chest. As the key turns in the rusty lock, a biting cold invades the room, and Sarah's spirit fully manifests, no longer as a shadow, but as an ethereal figure, filled with hate and pain. When they open the chest, they find an old diary that belonged to Sarah. The pages reveal details of her life, the abuse she suffered, and finally, the night she was brutally murdered. But the diary also contains a shocking revelation. Sarah was pregnant when she was killed. Her pain and desire for revenge stem not only from the betrayal and murder, but also from the loss of her unborn child. This discovery changes everything. Emily realizes that Sarah is not just a vengeful spirit, but a tormented soul who cannot accept the unjust death she suffered. Sarah sees in Jason and Lily the children she never had the chance to raise, and she is trying to take their lives to fill the void in her existence. Emily pleads with Sarah, trying to appeal to her lost humanity, while David, gripped by fear, tries to force the spirit out through more violent methods, following Samuel's instructions. But each exorcism attempt only seems to further enrage the spirit, making the situation increasingly desperate. Emily then faces an impossible choice. Allow Sarah to take Jason and Lily to the spirit world, believing that this will appease her suffering and free her family, or destroy the chest and risk unleashing an uncontrollable fury that could doom everyone in the house. The weight of this decision falls on her as Sarah continues to press her, alternating between showing the suffering she endured and threatening the lives of everyone in the house. Emily, surrounded by growing desperation, realizes that there is no time to lose. Jason and Lily are becoming increasingly fragile, their faces pale and eyes vacant, as if life is slowly being drained from their bodies. Sarah, the spirit, is not willing to negotiate. Her pain is too deep, her desire for revenge insatiable. Emily understands that any rash action could result in an even greater tragedy. While David wants to destroy the chest immediately, believing it will end the torment, Emily hesitates. She feels that destroying the chest could unleash something far worse, or even doom Sarah's spirit and her children to the same tragic fate. At this moment, Samuel, still recovering from Sarah's attack, reveals to Emily a final hope, a ritual of reconciliation. This ritual, however, is dangerous and could come at a great cost to the family. For it to work, they must not only appease the spirit but also accept her pain as part of their own lives. Difficult decisions and personal transformation. Emily decides to follow the more difficult and risky path, the ritual of reconciliation. She convinces David that destroying the chest could result in an even greater disaster. Reluctant but trusting Emily's intuition, David agrees to help. Together, with Samuel's guidance, they begin gathering the necessary elements for the ritual. The ritual requires them to recreate the past scenario, acknowledging Sarah's pain and willing to share the burden of her suffering. Emily must read aloud Sarah's final words, recorded in her diary, which express her unrequited love, her pain, and her deep anger. During the ritual, she realizes that the only way to save her family is to offer something in return, a kind of emotional sacrifice. In a moment of deep vulnerability, Emily places herself in Sarah's shoes, acknowledging that her anger is justified, that her desire for revenge is the cry of a soul that lost everything. She offers her own pain, guilt, and sorrow, hoping that this might appease the spirit. In doing so, Emily must also confront her own fears. The fear of losing her children, the fear of not being a good enough mother, the fear of failing to protect those she loves. As Emily reads the words from the diary, the house begins to shake. The lights flicker, shadows stretch, and Sarah manifests with almost palpable force. The atmosphere becomes suffocating, as if the very air is filled with pain. David and Samuel try to remain calm, but the fear in their eyes is evident. When Emily reaches the part of the diary where Sarah expresses the love she never got to give her unborn child, she feels a deep, inexplicable connection with the spirit. She looks at Jason and Lily, realizing that although they are alive, they are on the brink of the abyss, about to be taken by the darkness. With tears in her eyes, Emily pleads with Sarah to let them go, offering herself as a surrogate mother to the spirit, promising to remember Sarah and honor her memory, ensuring that her story will never be forgotten. This act of surrender and compassion creates a bond between the two mothers, one alive and the other dead, but both united by their unconditional love for their children. As the ritual reaches its climax, the tension in the house becomes almost unbearable. But then something changes. Sarah's figure, once shrouded in anger and pain, begins to soften. The screams and whispers that echoed through the house start to fade, and a sense of peace begins to spread. Emily feels a relief, as if a massive weight has been lifted from her shoulders. David, in turn, begins to understand the depth of the emotional and spiritual connection his wife has established with the spirit. He, who was once blinded by fear and anger, begins to see the strength and courage of Emily, recognizing how much she is willing to sacrifice to save the family. The ritual ends, and Sarah's spirit, now more serene, slowly begins to disappear. Jason and Lily, previously catatonic, start to regain consciousness. The house, once shrouded in a heavy and oppressive atmosphere, finally seems to breathe a sigh of relief. But there is still a sense that something remains unresolved, as if one final piece of the puzzle is missing. Although the ritual brought an apparent calm to the house, Emily cannot shake the feeling that something is still wrong. Sarah's presence seems to have diminished, but not completely vanished. Jason and Lily are more stable, but they still show signs of exhaustion and fear. Emily knows that what they did was only a temporary fix. Sarah is still trapped between the two worlds, and her vengeance, though temporarily appeased, has not yet been fully realized. That night, as the family tries to sleep, the tension in the house begins to grow again. Small noises become louder, shadows seem to move once more, and a sense of oppression fills the air. Emily has a terrible premonition that the real battle is yet to come. And she's right. Emily dreams of Sarah, but this time, the dream is different. She sees Sarah as she was before her death, happy and full of life. In the dream, Sarah is holding a child, the baby she never got to bring into the world. Looking closer, Emily realizes that the baby strangely resembles Jason. She wakes up with a start, her heart racing, and suddenly everything makes sense. Sarah doesn't just want revenge. She wants something that cannot be replaced, the child she lost. Emily rushes to the basement, where the chest is still open, and begins to rummage through the old items inside. Among the objects, she finds an old photograph of Sarah, holding a small doll, which is missing from the chest. Emily understands that this doll, which likely represented the baby Sarah was expecting, was removed from the chest during the events that led to the tragedy. The doll is the final piece Sarah needs to rest in peace. But there's a problem. Jason, still influenced by the spirit, has taken the doll and is hiding somewhere in the house. The tension rises as Emily and David realize that Jason is not in his room. Time is running out. Sarah is becoming stronger, and without the doll, she will never leave the family in peace. Emily and David frantically search for Jason in the house, which is now in complete chaos. The walls seem to pulse, objects fly through the air, and the atmosphere in the house is one of pure terror. They finally find Jason in the attic, where he is standing in front of a window, holding the doll with a vacant stare. Sarah is beside him, almost invisible, but her presence is felt in every dark corner of the attic. Emily, filled with determination, moves toward Jason, trying to pull him out of the trance. She speaks to him softly, reminding him of who he is, of how much he is loved. But Sarah will not give up easily. The spirit begins to try to take over Jason's body, while Emily fights to pull him back. David, seeing that the situation is spiraling out of control, grabs the chest and tries to use it as a trap for Sarah, believing that if he can close the chest again with the doll inside, Sarah would be sealed away forever. But when he tries to pull Jason away from the window and place the doll back in the chest, an invisible force hurls him across the room. At that moment, Emily realizes that the only way to save her son is to fully embrace Sarah's pain, accepting it as part of herself. She approaches Sarah, looking directly where she believes the spirit's eyes would be. Emily tells Sarah that she understands the pain of losing a child, that no one should have to go through that, and she promises that Sarah's story will never be forgotten, that she will always remember the tragedy that led her to this state. Emily offers the doll to Sarah, not as something to be taken by force, but as a gift, a way to mend what was lost. With this, Sarah seems to hesitate. For the first time, the dark and terrifying figure of Sarah dissolves, revealing the spirit of a broken woman, but one still with traces of humanity. She takes the doll, looks at Jason with an expression that is a mix of sadness and relief, and begins to fade away. When Sarah finally disappears, the house falls silent. Jason collapses into Emily's arms, exhausted but finally free from the spirit's influence. The heavy atmosphere that had enveloped the house is replaced by a sense of peace and sadness at the same time. The doll, now just a harmless object, falls to the floor with no power remaining. Emily and David embrace, both knowing they have survived something extraordinary, but that the experience has changed them forever. The chest closes on its own, as if completing a cycle, and a gentle breeze flows through the window, carrying with it a faint scent of flowers, like a final goodbye from Sarah. In the days following the final confrontation, the house in Willow Creek seems to have finally found peace. The oppressive atmosphere that once dominated every room has given way to an unexpected tranquility. The supernatural events have completely ceased, and the house, once dark and filled with pain, begins to feel more like a home. However, the Thompson family bears the scars of what they experienced, both physically and emotionally. Emily, though relieved that the torment is over, feels the weight of everything that has happened. She has become more introspective, often revisiting the moments when she had to confront Sarah and grapple with the idea of almost losing her children to a vengeful spirit. She realizes that she faced something no one should ever have to face, and the experience has profoundly changed her. She has become stronger and more protective, but also more aware of life's fragility and the importance of cherishing every moment with her family. David, on the other hand, carries the guilt of not having believed Emily from the beginning. He struggles to forgive himself for ignoring the signs and for almost losing his family due to his skepticism. The experience has made him rethink his priorities and his role, as a father and husband. He strives to be more present and open, especially with Jason and Lily, who still need time to recover from the trauma. Samuel, the medium, visits the family to ensure that no malevolent presence remains in the house. He confirms that Sarah's spirit has finally found peace and that the house is free of any supernatural influence. He also advises Emily and David to seek help in dealing with the trauma they endured, especially for the children, who were the most affected. Jason and Lily begin to recover slowly. Jason, who was the most connected to Sarah's spirit, shows a maturity beyond his years, as if he has understood Sarah's pain and loss on a deep level. He still draws, but now his illustrations are of flower-filled fields and bright skies, a reflection of the peace he feels after Sarah's departure. Lily, though still a bit frightened, returns to being the cheerful child she was before, with the constant and loving support of her parents. Emily decides that the family needs a fresh start. She convinces David to sell the house and move to another place, far from the memories of Willow Creek. The town, with its secrets and mysteries, will never be the same for them. They move to a neighboring town, where they buy a new house and begin to rebuild their lives, this time with a deeper understanding of what truly matters. Before they leave, Emily makes one last visit to Sarah's grave in the local cemetery. She places the doll that was so important to Sarah on the headstone as a final tribute. Emily promises Sarah that her story will never be forgotten and that her memory will be honored. With this, she feels a sense of emotional closure, as if she can finally move on. Over time, the Thompson family begins to heal. What they lived through has united them in ways they never imagined possible. They learn to cherish the simple moments and the importance of being together, overcoming fear and pain. Emily and David reconnect, strengthening their relationship and committing to never again ignoring each other's feelings. Jason and Lily continue to grow, now closer than ever, understanding that despite the horrors they faced, their family remained united and stronger. The experience in the house at Willow Creek is something that will always be a part of their lives, but they choose not to live in fear, but rather with gratitude for having survived and for being able to continue together. In the end, the house in Willow Creek remains empty for many years, known as the house that never finds an owner. The town's residents avoid talking about the events that took place there, but the legends about Sarah continue to circulate among the generations. However, those who truly know the story understand that although Sarah was a frightening presence, she was also a soul who, in the end, found peace through the love and compassion of a mother willing to sacrifice everything for her children. The Thompson family, now in their new home, moves forward, always remembering what they went through, but determined to create new memories, free from fear and the past. They have learned that the true power of love can overcome even the darkest forces, and that revenge only leads to destruction, while forgiveness and compassion bring true redemption.